Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Continue to take a look at some of these week one games that are some of the better ones in this 2023 college football season. And Dill, we're going to the ACC as Clemson goes on the road to Duke. And on the surface level, for a lot of the national media, this is a throwaway game. Clemson is going to come into Duke and absolutely roll. I'll tell you what, the spread is 12 points, and that's for a reason. This Duke team under Mike Elko is a very, very quality team. And I think this is one of the more intriguing games in week one because of the storylines. Can Duke replicate the success they had under Mike Elko in year one? And then for Clemson, there's a plethora of storylines, including the offense. What does this offense look like in Garrett Riley? I've been throughout the summer kind of banging the table for this Clemson Tigers team, thinking this is one of the better teams, not only in the ACC, but in the entire country. My optimism of Clemson, it's going to be tested early week one against a quality Duke team. Now, before we get into it again, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been a blast taking deep dives into these programs. Now getting into the game previews, breaking down the matchups. It's going to be a blast. One, if you do enjoy the content, you want to support the boys, consider subscribing to the channel. And then two, more importantly, let us know in the comment section who you guys are taking. Does Clemson cover the 12 points? Appreciate you guys rocking with us, Dale. I'm going to kick this one off to you. Early takes on this week one matchup that I really do think is a heavyweight matchup.
I mean, you mentioned it. It's like 2-3 years ago. You think this matchup, like, oh, I'm
30-point spread.
Who's watching? Like, why would you? Duke has taken themselves to a point under Elko, and especially led by Riley Leonard, who, when you have a quarterback like that, that's how you elevate your program in a sense. If Clemson doesn't play really good football, I don't think their stars can just dominate in a way. Like when you see a Clemson team play a weak team, like, yeah, they can play really bad and then just take over with a couple of their stars. I don't think that's the case right now for, like, if they don't play pretty good as a whole against Duke they can beat them, and they'll certainly keep it really close within that spread.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think in years past, Clemson could play their C, maybe D ball and beat the Duke Blue Devils, excuse me. This year, I mean, this is not the 2 to 3 years ago Duke. This is a very quality team, and I want to start because I mean, as like a guy that's been kind of on the leading the Clemson hype train, if you will, I want to start on the offensive side of the ball, and I cannot wait. And this is really the key, not like just to week one, but this Clemson season in 2023. How well can Garrett Riley get it to the playmakers? That was something he excelled at TCU. And quite frankly, I think that's why Dabo in this program made the move to get Garrett Riley, because that was something Duke or Clemson was horrible at last year. I mean, you have one of the most dynamic running backs in Will Shipley. I think the wide receivers are extremely slept on. Like Antonio Williams, one of the budding stars. I think Adam Randall's a guy to keep an eye on. Bo Collins, very quality wide receiver. How well can Garrett Riley get those guys touches where they can have massive impacts on the game? That's the question I have, and it's not going to be easy to do because there's not a more disciplined team than this Mike Elko and Duke Blue Devils defense.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, Clemson's going to need to play with some inventiveness and have some magic on offense, because if they just think they're going to like rely on Will Shipley kind of in the way they have in the past at times, I think this Duke front seven's too good. Like, you got two really good interior guys. And
Dwayne Carter's a dog.
Carter, like, you just can't line it up and be like, oh, well, we can play a very boring, stodgy offense and just run and be physical on this team, because they're too good in the front seven. So that's why it's almost exciting. Like, it's Garrett Riley's going to have to kind of bring his A game against Duke, because they're not going to be able to just do what they do against other teams where they're just physically way better than, because the Duke's front seven's good.
Yeah, and it's like we talk about like going back and watching some of that Clemson offense last year. Like, I wouldn't even say it was like boring. It was just like they tried to do stuff that just didn't work. Like, it was like they tried to be fancy with it sometimes, gets the swing passes out, and it just was like nothing worked. Garrett Riley, much better at that. I do think another storyline for Clemson fans, and this is another reason why I'm really high in Clemson. You mentioned, can Clemson might not be able to just establish their physicality against this Duke defense. I might push back on that a little bit. Now, this Clemson offensive line in 2021, it was young and it was underdeveloped. And you saw week one against Georgia, like they just got handled. And then in 2022, you saw some significant steps. You lose a guy like McFadden Dill. This Clemson offensive line, I think, could be one of the more improved units we see in the whole entire country. A lot of these guys return from being youngsters. They've already taken that step. they can take that next step in 2023, Dill, I think this Clemson offensive line can be one of the better groups in the ACC and probably one of the better groups in the country.
And you're right to say, like, we'll know pretty quickly whether they've done it, because again, if Duke's going to be really tough in the middle.
That's why I'm so excited for this game. And that's why I think the national media is just like failing to see it. Like, you're going to learn a lot from this Clemson offense in terms of how does this Garrett Riley offense look? How can this offensive line impose the will? Because this is a very quality Duke defense. Now, another massive storyline to this game. And I mean, when you talk Clemson football and why I'm so high on it, yes, I'm high on the offense. This Clemson defense, I think, might be freaky in 2023. You look at the returning production, you lose guys like Trenton Simpson, Brian Brzee, Miles Murphy, all guys that were coveted NFL draft picks. They're 23rd nationally in returning production on defense. And that might speak to a little bit of like Brian Brzee maybe struggling to get back from that injury, not being the guy he was as a younger guy at Clemson. But I think it also speaks to more of like they got a ton of dogs returning, especially in that front seven. We'll get to the secondary, which is my group later. But you take a look at this front seven. They're going up against a very good Duke offensive line and a quarterback in Riley Leonard that is an absolute stud.
And one thing for Duke is I don't think they've seen a defense like they certainly didn't last year. I mean, they went 9-4.
Outside of the UNC defense, quality.
Yeah, so they didn't see anything like what Clemson has. They didn't play Florida State. They didn't play Notre Dame. They just didn't have to see any of those real physical defensive fronts that are both come at you from their defensive line. Their linebackers are super athletic. Their cornerbacks and safeties are all big and physical and fast. It will be interesting to see, does Duke have the horsepower to kind of just match up and play with that unit? Because last year, I mean, those wideouts can really play, but we didn't see it. We didn't have to see them play against the secondary or a team in general with this much talent as Duke.
Yeah, and I think you'll learn as similar to, I don't know, I call this like week one's for learning, like learning what these teams are going to be during the season. And it's hard to learn when you play like an FCS team week one. Duke is going to allow Clemson to learn. And quite frankly, I don't know if I'm giving enough respect to Duke. Like Riley Leonard, I said, I think is the second best quarterback in the ACC as we stand right now, heading back from last year. They have all pretty much, I mean, they're returning. I just talked about Clemson's returning production. Duke is top 10 nationally in returning production on the offensive side of the ball, right? Jalen Calhoun's a bona fide stud at the wide receiver guy. Jordan Moore, who was playing quarterback last year, I remember having the Duke guys come on and kind of teach us a little about Duke, said, wherever Jordan Moore is going to line up, like you got to keep an eye on him because he's probably the biggest playmaker on this Duke team. Him, wide receiver, second year, I think he could be a stud. Like this Duke offense is quality. And then I'm looking to the secondary. Like we spent a lot of time talking about the front seven, guys like Ruocco, guys like Tyler Davis, Peter Woods, Jeremiah Trotter, Barry Carr, like all NFL dudes. Though the secondary was what struggled for Clemson last year. It was a young group. It was a banged up group. If this Clemson secondary can be studs and we're going to know if they can be a great group against Duke, man, you have to be extremely excited about Clemson throughout the rest of the season.
And that's one of my big concerns for Duke coming to this game is just, do they have the talent? If Clemson plays really good on defense, do they have the top end talent to test them at any level? Like their offensive line, Graham Barton's very good. But if everyone on this Clemson defensive line plays really good football, do they have five guys as a unit to match up with that unit? And again, probably more significantly, I don't know that Duke has like those first round pick caliber wide receivers, like very good ACC wide receivers, no doubt. But do they have a room like Alabama or LSU had a handful of years ago when they had 2, 3, 4 first round picks in their unit and it just didn't matter who they played because they were too talented? If Clemson's like secondary plays as good as we think they can play, I just don't know if Duke has the firepower to do it. Having said that, if Clemson is in any way sloppy, this Duke team is just too good. They'll rip them apart.
100%.
And these wide receivers are really good. So it's like Clemson's going to need to play not a perfect game, but like one of their better games if they think they're going to like beat this team and cover that spread. Yeah,
from an NFL draft standpoint, you got to get your notepad out because you're going to see Graham Barton going against some elite defensive linemen. And then you're going to see, learn about like Nate Wiggins, Torino Pride, who I know is not eligible yet, but he's a youngster that I'm really high on. Andrew Makuba, can he get back to that true freshman form there? He was legitimately elite. That's what I'm most excited about. And I kind of echo what you say when I guess this will kind of get us into the pick, right? Clemson comes in comes on the road as a 12-point favorite. And if Clemson plays their A football game with all this talent on both sides of the ball, for me, it's hard to see Duke making this one like inside of 10 points. And so my pick right now, I'm having Clemson covering the 12. I think if Clemson plays that kind of game where they're as good as I think they can be, I struggle to see Duke moving the football in offense, and I quite frankly struggle to see them getting many stops on the defense side of the ball. And this is like last year, like I would avoid taking Clemson to cover games outside of 7 points because that offense really struggled to pull away from teams. This year, I'm a little bit more optimistic about this offense. And so give me 12 points, Clemson on the road. I think I like that one.
Now, on the surface, I definitely agree because I just think Clemson's coming into the season straight up underrated. I think
agree.
people don't appreciate
Clemson boys.
How much different like Garrett Riley might make this team. And I think if Klubnik, like he's just so talented, if he just gets it rolling, and I believe in Riley to do it. I think they're coming in underrated. The thing is now we've been saying this for 2 years though about Clemson is
but we've been saying it with like not Garrett Riley leading the offense
100%, and that's like why I'm probably optimistic. Because if you ask me, like I always thought Clemson was coming in like these point spreads are too low, and we've been burned a million times on Clemson point spreads.
Remember the days where like Joseph Nagata, Joe, and we're like, this is a great Clemson wide receiver room, and it just never really came to fruition. Like looking
that's
back,
my issue is like, is Clemson actually gonna now? This is a 2-year running thing, I would say.
Yeah.
Are they gonna finally put it together and play up to the talent? I mean, they're so loaded. That's why it gives me cause to pause. Is I still now need to be proved. They need to prove it to me because it's been 2 years now of saying this. And
you're I mean, like just sleeping on Garrett Riley. What are you going to bring to this offense?
I wasn't sleeping for so long, and they just put me to sleep. Like knocked me unconscious.
I'm riding with Clemson. I'm. And again, I don't know. Maybe I'm just too high on this Clemson team.
They don't play really good football. They're not going to even come close to covering the spread. Like Duke is too good of a team to have them play not like very much close to what they're capable of doing. Duke's good. They're really good.
No, and again, it's not a Duke thing. I feel like people are going to get up here and say like I'm hating on Duke. I'm not. Like I just said Riley Leonard's the second best quarterback in the ACC coming into the season. I truly believe that.
That's all they said. Pause because it's like they need to play the way they can play Clemson, and it hasn't happened enough in the last.
No cause to pause with me on the Clemson hype train. I'm going to say that. Like, give me Clemson covering the 12. You're not going to see a higher guy on the Clemson Tigers than me. I think they come into Duke. I think they cover the 12. I don't think Duke has the firepower to match up with the Clemson Tigers. You combine that with Garrett Riley calling the offense, putting my flag is stick in the ground. Give me Clemson covering the 12. Again, guys, let me know in the comment. Let us know in the comment section who we're taking in this game. It's going to be a good one. We're going to learn a lot. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys, supporting the fellas, and we'll talk to y'all later.